Hi, I'm Josh McGrath.
I'm Andrew Haas.
And this is the Ardent Pursuit Podcast. In today's episode, we're tackling a word that gets tossed around a lot, friendzone. Now, most people think of it as a verb, as in, she friendzoned me. But you can also think of friendzone as a noun, a state of being where one person wants more than friendship, while the other just wants to stay good friends. We're going to unpack how you end up there, why it happens, and most importantly, how to move forward with clarity, confidence, and integrity. But before we jump in, we want to ask you to subscribe to the show. You can watch the video on YouTube or listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And remember to share with friends because changing the dating culture starts with changing the conversation. So, Andrew, talking about friendzone today, very excited about this topic.
Yes, this is a good one. And we want to unpack, first of all, what the friendzone is and what guys can do about it if they find themselves there. Mm-hmm. So most men know when they're in the friend zone. They'll hear things like, you're like a brother, or why can't more guys be like you, or you're my best friend. But, honestly, most guys don't need to know when they're in the friend zone because they can pretty much already know that they're there.
That's so true. And we want to look at some of the common reasons men end up in the friend zone. There's probably hundreds of reasons. Our list is not exhaustive, but there's some of the most popular reasons why men find themselves in the friend zone. And the first is, there's just no chemistry. She's not romantically interested in you. And this is something that happens often, where men form a friendship with a woman and she doesn't find him romantically interesting at all, but she likes him as a friend. And so for her, it's very easy to keep him in the friend zone, even though he may find himself very much attracted to her and wishing that a romantic relationship could form. And there are plenty of, TV, episodes and movies that are based around this very idea.
And, attraction is such a nuanced thing. And much like a woman can change subtle things about how she dresses or how she looks to go from less interesting to more interesting, guys can do that with their personality even. We know that women are more biased toward a guy's personality, less about appearance. Mm-hmm. And so there are subtle things that a guy can change about his personality to go from less attractive to more attractive. Not that we change who we are necessarily, but it's something for men to be aware of, that if someone does not find you interesting, they may never.
Sure.
But there's a chance also that they could at some point. Now, another reason could be timing or circumstances. Men are much more quick to grow feelings for a woman.
Yeah.
Her, on the other hand, she will need generally more of an on-ramp. Mm-hmm. And so men need to be ready and willing to allow space for that. If it's to happen, allow space, allow time for her to see you as someone who is, uninteresting, to get to a place where she's interested in you.
And that leads into the idea of a woman who wants to keep her options open. We talked about this concept back in episode 5 when we discussed the idea of putting a woman on layaway. And sometimes women will form a great friendship with a guy and they really like him. And they might even be willing to entertain the idea of a romantic relationship with him, but they want to keep their options open just in case, Mr. Perfect comes along. The guy who's a bit taller, a bit richer, a bit better looking, a bit more in shape, a bit whatever. Mm-hmm. And so they won't act on, a romantic relationship. They'll keep him positioned in the friend zone where they get the comfort of that friendship without the commitment of being romantically, pursued by him.
And that's a place to be really careful because relational connection, emotional connection can be a good thing. It can obviously go too far, but a guy needs to be careful that he is not staying in an emotional or relational place with a woman that is not really sustainable long term.
And one of the ways that men can actually end up here is by, not acting on their attraction to her early enough after meeting her. We've covered this concept before with, the window of opportunity, where after meeting a woman, there's kind of this natural time period by which a man, can act on his attraction to her. But if he delays that attraction oftentimes turns into just kind of, a friendship where there is no longer the same, attraction that was there initially upon first meeting her. And so men have to be willing to act on their feelings towards her early on. Otherwise, it's possible they'll just end up in the friend zone.
And another reason could be that she values the friendship too much. There's this tendency to, don't rock the boat, or there's a good thing, we got a good thing going, don't want to change it. And, in our desire to avoid risk or uncertainty, women and men do this too. We can want to keep things as they are.
Sure.
And, as a guy, you could end up in a place where you are a good friend, or you could be, fulfilling a role, if you will, to her. But ultimately, it's just playing it safe, and it's not going to get you anywhere.
Or he might be not assertive enough. He might just be, too nice. Now, you could probably do an entire episode on men being too nice. This is a trope that many single men are aware of because it's all over the internet, where women will oftentimes break up with a guy, or they won't go out on a second date with him because, he's, quote, too nice. But what we're talking about here is not that he's treating her well, and that is the problem. What we're talking about is the fact that he's not assertive. He kind of just goes with whatever she wants, does whatever she wants, very much exists to keep her happy. He doesn't have opinions or thoughts of his own. He's not planning things out for them. And he's not the kind of guy who would lead a romantic relationship. He's not the kind of guy that would step out and be like, hey, I want to pursue you. Here's my plan. Here's my intention with you. He's just going to kind of be a bit passive, that beta male concept. And that is oftentimes very unattractive to women.
And women, more often than men, need someone or desire to someone to be there for them emotionally, for that emotional connection. And guys are often ready and willing, at least for a time, to step into that role.
Yes.
And we've talked about this. It could be premature, and there's a way to walk that out well. What a guy doesn't want to do, he wants to avoid getting into a situation where he's simply providing his emotions or being someone who is there to help her process her emotions.
Yeah.
And that's where it stays.
Absolutely. You don't, as the man, ever want to become her emotional support animal. And all too often, men are happy to be that emotional crutch for her. They are that puppy that she can, have in her life, that when she needs the emotional support, you're right there, like a little puppy, eager, big wide eyes, tongue hanging out of your mouth, happy to see her and happy to be there at the drop of a hat as soon as she needs you. But that's so unhealthy. That dynamic is unhealthy for not only the woman, but it's unhealthy for you as the man to ever be in a situation where you're dropping everything to be her emotional support. That is not your role or responsibility.
And too often I've been aware of situations where the guy will be one of the first people she texts for whatever reason. That's not the point. The point is, are you someone that she communicates with regularly as just a friend? Again, not problematic in and of itself, but it's symbolic of something, possibly something bigger, or but it's symbolic of probably a bigger, deeper issue.
Now, her lack of romantic interest in you as a man may be due to one of two things. Either her lack of chemistry with you, so there's just no chemistry there, not now, not ever. Or it may be a timing issue in her life where, she may be thinking, hey, I could be interested or am interested, just not now.
So the question then becomes, how do you get out of the friend zone? For a lot of guys, they need to stop trying to guess what her feelings are. Too many men try to play it safe, and they want to have certainty of where she's at, what she's feeling before they reveal much. But men need to be ready and willing to take on that risk, however little or big, make that move first. Be willing to, expose some vulnerability.
Yep.
Move forward with some uncertainty and be ready and willing to share where you're at without really knowing much of where she's at.
That's so true. And men need to stop faking platonic feelings for her in order to be able to maintain that sense of closeness that may exist. It's easy for a man, we talked about this prior, to take on the role of being that good friend because they like the status quo of closeness and of emotional intimacy. But if a man has feelings for a woman, even if he doesn't, either way, you should not be stuck in this intimate friend zone with a woman. That's unhealthy.
Too often, the dynamic that grows to exist here is this relational connection, is an emotional connection that it can be subtle, but it's really long-term, either not sustainable or not healthy.
And you don't want to cling to a false sense of hope. It's easy when you desire something, the Bible talks about how hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. It's easy to place hope in the idea that someday she'll see you as a potential romantic interest. Again, there are a lot of TV shows out there that highlight this. One that I've been going through is Big Bang Theory. There are multiple, situations and characters, and of course it's, comical, where they're holding out hope that they'll be the last man standing, so to speak. And then, there'll be a romantic pursuit. But the reality is men need to move out of holding on to the hope of an idea of being together and actually, clarity is kindness. Get clarity on where things stand. You don't want to live in this eternal state of hoping someday, because that someday may never come.
And that is a point worth repeating. I think men need to keep it at the forefront that clarity is kindness, whether that means you being clear of where you're at, or it could be seeking clarity of where she's at in a way that's appropriate and respectful, or it could be both. But either way, too many men will be okay with a vague, less clear situation because there's a comfort there, there's an attention there, and they'll too often be happy with just being there for however long that may exist.
And one of the fastest ways out of the friend zone is to have that dreaded conversation with her where you are going to be honest and intentional about how you feel towards her. And a lot of men will avoid this conversation because they don't want it to be awkward. They don't want to change the dynamic of the relationship. They like the status quo. But men are called to lead romantic relationships. And so if you have any hope of this being a romantic relationship, you, as the man, must lead with honesty, clarity, and intentionality.
Be intentional, but not intense.
Yes.
A lot of guys will come in full throttle and can often overwhelm her or make her feel uncomfortable. And so, yes, men need to be intentional, be clear, be appropriate, and find that tension of what's too much and what's not enough.
So 3 things that men need to cover in this conversation. 1, tell her how you feel. 2, tell her what you're looking for. And 3, be ready to move on. This is hard. It takes some planning. You want to know what you're going to say. And, the first 2, how you feel and what you're looking for, that's pretty self-explanatory. But I want to focus for a moment here on this idea of be ready to move on. Men will quickly change their plan, their vision, their strategy, if a woman responds in a way that gives a sense of potential opportunity or hope down the road. And this is hard for men to hear, but do not stay in the friend zone simply because she's offering a glimmer of hope that down the road it could turn into something. You as the man need to know where you stand and what your plan is. Again, clarity is kindness. Do not be swayed by that feminine voice, by that emotional connection, by that friendship/relational opportunity, by the way she makes you feel. You must lead with integrity and intentionality.
Because the reality is, for men who eventually get married, they won't have an elevated emotional or relational connection with other women. And so for men to pursue or be engaged in that capacity with one or more women for an extended period and find a satisfaction or comfort or a sense of, I don't mind this, that's actually going to wrongly pattern things in your life, where that's going to normalize a lot of stuff. And when that day comes, if you're married, all of that stuff is still going to feel normal.
Sure.
And it's going to make it that much harder to realize, oh, with my wife, these are normal and good relational connections, emotional connections. But that's not going to be true for everyone else.
So let's talk about if she does reject you. How should you respond? Because you're approaching her stating how you feel and what you're looking for, not because the expectation is she's going to say yes and you're going to end up in a blissful relationship and married and you live happily ever after. You're moving forward in this intentional conversation with her because clarity is kindness, and because as a man, you recognize it's unhealthy to be in the friend zone for her and for you. So that's why you're having this conversation. It's icing on the cake if she's like, you know what, I do like you. Absolutely, let's start dating. Total win, good for you. But it's a very real possibility that she is going to say, no, I'm not interested in being in a romantic relationship with you. So she's going to reject you. Now, we have an entire episode devoted to this, episode 19, but this is a bit of a unique situation because of the closeness of friendship, because you're in this, friend zone state. There's definitely a deeper connection and emotional intimacy that exists here. So how you respond really matters.
Yes, and to start, do not be dramatic.
Yeah.
Do not create an environment where drama can grow and foster.
And it's important to note that in a really close friendship, when one party makes known their feelings towards the other, it will oftentimes create a heightened emotional environment. And so she may respond in a dramatic fashion. You cannot reciprocate in the same dramatic way.
That is true. And it's very important in that process to remain kind and loving. Again, keep at the forefront what is best for her, what is most appropriate here, what is going to leave her better off down the road.
Also, you need to accept the rejection gracefully. Don't try to pressure or manipulate her to change her mind. Don't try to hold over her. Well, you know how we've been so close as friends for so many years and all the memories we've shared and all the things we've done. We're not going to be able to do that if you don't date me.
Also, don't even downplay your own feelings. A lot of times guys will play that card of, oh, well, I wasn't really interested anyway.
It's so true.
Or, oh, yeah, not a big deal. No, own your part of it. If you had strong feelings for her, be clear and appropriate. But also you can just have that conversation. You don't have to sort of backpedal.
And you've got to recognize that the dynamic between the two of you is going to change, and it's incumbent upon you as the man to make that change. You no longer are going to be close friends who, text every day or chat each other every day, or, you're each other's coffee dates or wedding dates or whatever. You as the man need to walk away from that friendship, not because you're rejecting her, and it's not like you're cutting her out of your life. You're not saying, I'm never going to talk to you, you can't ever text me. You're not doing any of that. This is a tension to manage for sure.
Right.
Men need wisdom. You're going to need, authority and accountability to speak into this process. But you are recognizing that, man, there's some boundaries that we have to set. And the reason why is because it's not healthy for me as the man to be your emotional support and to constantly be living in this, friend zone state?
Because the reality is, if a guy gets married someday, the women in the past that he had deep emotional connections with, that won't exist. And so he needs to realize, okay, I can either de-escalate things now, or I can de-escalate them when I'm married.
Yeah.
Like at that point, it's almost too late, or it's going to be much less healthy, much harder to do.
Yep.
And the kind thing could actually be for her. There could be a situation where she genuinely appreciates your friendship, conversation, connection, but that's really may not be best for her, because if you marry someone else, that dynamic with her is going to change. So either you change it now when there's a good space and place to do it, or change will be forced to later on where things can be much more messy.
You're absolutely right. Because if you don't change the dynamic, let's just play this out a little bit. You're her emotional support, you're her BFF, and now some other guy enters into the picture who romantically pursues her. It would be a very awkward dynamic for there to be this guy who's pursuing her, but you're like her confidant. Like between men, that's just weird. Maybe for women, they don't understand that dynamic. Maybe they do. But like if I were pursuing a woman and come to find out her like BFF is some other bro, and she's talking to him about me.
It's weird.
And like I want to take her out on a coffee date and she wants to bring her bro there with her. And I'm like, it's so weird, because I'm like, am I competing with him? Are we like both in competition for you? And she's like, no. He's just like my best friend. He's like my brother. I'm like, but he's not. So this is a weird dynamic that gets set. And, again, women may not be aware of this, but from a guy's perspective, that's weird. Like I'm looking at a woman who has that relationship and I'm thinking, this is bizarre, and I don't really want anything to do with that, because that's dysfunctional. That's unhealthy. That's like, I stay away from that.
And if she turns down your pursuit of her, the goal then isn't to then pursue being close friends.
Exactly.
This is not, if I can't have the relationship, I'm going to get as much as I can get. You don't just shift slightly and still try to pursue closeness to her to the extent that she would allow.
And I know that for some of our listeners, they're going to disagree. There's the age-old debate of, can men and women, be close friends? And we're not here to settle that debate, but what we are here to settle is that men cannot be in the friend zone with a woman who rejects their romantic overtures. That is unhealthy. That is dysfunctional. And from a Christian perspective, that's just not loving to her. If you truly care about her, don't string her along emotionally supported by you when you can't invest in her like you would a wife. That is a disservice to her. That is unloving and unkind to her. And so it's hard. Change is difficult, particularly relational change. The dynamic's going to be dramatically different. You're going to feel like you just cut, a person out of your life, and you're not doing it in an unloving or unkind manner. Of course, still remain, cordial with each other. You don't suddenly have to find different friends groups, go to different events, attend different church services. It's not any of that. But what you are doing is you're setting healthy communication boundaries in your life. You're setting healthy time boundaries in your life where she's not dependent upon you and you're not dependent upon her.
Yeah, that actually is a good point. This is not either or. Too many men, I think, would just flip-flop to the other side where, okay, if she's not interested in me, then I'm just going to completely ignore her. The goal is to stay friends, or at least, be in a place where you can converse. This isn't a all or nothing. And some of the tension that a guy is going to feel is what is appropriate?
Yep.
What is too much? What is not enough? And so that's for the guy to figure out. He wants to stay engaged to a level that is appropriate. That's not going to make her feel awkward.
Yeah.
Because too many guys through these conversations can leave her feeling like, I hope he doesn't show up. I hope he doesn't come around. Oh no, he's going to be there. And the guy should really bear the responsibility of doing what he can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. While there's a lot more that could be said on this topic, I think that's a great place to conclude for today. So, gentlemen, if you've been living in the friend zone, waiting, hoping, overthinking, let this be your wake-up call. And don't stay trapped in ambiguity. Be honest with her. Be honest with yourself. Be clear about your intentions, and whatever the outcome, be a man of integrity. Your time, your energy, your emotional bandwidth are too valuable to be someone else's backup plan or emotional crutch. So, here's your homework. If there's a woman you're interested in and there's a chance she doesn't know it, do something about it. Seek advice from your authority and accountability. Get wisdom on what your next step should be, not for the sake of simply getting her to say yes to your romantic pursuit, but to be able to move forward in your life. Thanks for listening. We love having you here on the Ardent Pursuit podcast, and we look forward to having you here next time.